Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Glenn.
I'm Michael.
We're Woods and Baits, and today we're going to talk about what we need to do after a divorce case is finalized. So this is kind of your area.
Yeah, so first thing after a divorce is finalized, read the divorce decree. Know what your rights are under that divorce decree. Know what your responsibilities are under that divorce decree. Read it, understand it. If you don't understand it, contact an attorney. If you had an attorney representing you in the divorce case, contact them. Ask them to explain any questions that you have in that decree. After you understand what your responsibilities are under that divorce decree, then you want to start updating some account information. So I know we had talked about updating a will, I think, is one thing we discussed last video. Anything else they should update after a divorce?
I think a will is a good first step. If I'm divorced and I've got that order entered that says this is what I'm supposed to do, these are my obligations moving forward. If I had done some estate planning before or during my marriage, it's very likely that I would have done a will that said I leave everything I own to my spouse, or I leave a substantial amount of my assets to my spouse. It's very likely that I would have listed my spouse as beneficiary of my retirement accounts, beneficiary of my life insurance accounts, maybe a joint owner on my bank accounts, things like that. I don't know what your typical experience is, but after a divorce, that's probably not who your clients want to get those assets if they were to pass away.
No, I would think after a divorce is finalized, you walk out of that room, you have your marriage freshly dissolved. If you pass away later that day and you don't update any of those accounts, the person you just divorced is going to get all those assets if you set up your estate, as Blinn mentioned. So update your beneficiary on your life insurance policies. One thing on retirement accounts, a lot of times they're divided through the courts through what's called a qualified domestic relations order, or Illinois has a qualified Illinois domestic relations order. A lot of times parties divide those retirement assets, whether that's a 401k or a pension or both, but there has to be a separate order that gets entered to divide those assets. A lot of times, and I've seen it a lot recently, parties get divorced and they think everything is finalized, and then 20 years down the road they get to the age of retirement, they go to draw their retirement, whether that's a pension or taking distributions from a 401k, and then you realize, well, my ex-spouse is supposed to get some portion of this. What do I do now? Well, then you have to go back to court. You have to get that qualified domestic relations order entered, have it served on the plan administrator to divide those assets. And in that same vein, those retirement assets, you can list your beneficiaries on too. So if you are working for Ameren, accruing a large pension through Ameren, and you get divorced, you want to update that beneficiary so your ex-spouse isn't receiving all that retirement benefit that you worked hard you worked and earned over the lifetime of the marriage. So
do you see a lot of times that, maybe not a lot of times, but sometimes that once that order is entered in the divorce, maybe some of those cleanup items, if you will, don't actually get done? So maybe the couple owned real estate together, and one or the other of them was supposed to take the real estate from the marriage. There has to be a deed that's recorded for that to happen. I mean, does that get missed? Do some of those little details get missed sometimes?
yeah, we've had people call in our office and they go to sell their house after they get divorced. Maybe it was 2-3 years ago they got divorced. Now they go to sell their house. Title company's requiring a quitclaim deed from your ex-spouse. That way you have authority to fully transfer that piece of real estate. So if one party is receiving a piece of real estate in a divorce decree, make sure that you get the other side to sign that quitclaim deed. That way when you go to sell that property in the future, you don't have to clean that up. Another thing that I would think about during a divorce, a lot of times spouses cover each other for health insurance purposes. So if you get divorced and, for example, if I'm being covered by my spouse for health insurance and we get divorced next enrollment period, she's not going to cover me for health insurance. So I'm either going to have to get health insurance through my employer, go out on the private market, or there's COBRA insurance, which qualifies you to continue on your spouse's plan for up to 1 year, but you are responsible for those premiums. The employer will no longer pay those.
That's probably outlined in the divorce decree also.
Yes.
Order tells you a lot. Good things to think about. Good. It's always good to plan.
It comes up a lot whenever you least expect it. So an individual passes away, didn't update these accounts, and all of a sudden their ex-spouse of 20 years is receiving a lot of their assets when, you know, maybe there's some adult children that feel like they should be inheriting these assets. Maybe the spouse never remarried. Well, again, if you don't update these estate planning, or if you don't update your estate planning, then you're in a position where those assets might go to someone where you don't want them to go to.
One thing that comes to mind for me as we talk about this is who's going to control those assets if you have minor children, for instance, because biological parent, you know, is the default guardian of a minor child. So if that's not who you want to be controlling those assets, if something were to happen to you, that's something that could be outlined in a revised will also. And I've done that before, so just another idea there.
Yeah, people walk out of the courtroom and think, great, my divorce is finalized, but a lot of times there's some loose ends to tie up, and it's better to do them quickly and while it's still fresh on everybody's mind, because from experience, it's very difficult to read and understand a 1995 divorce decree from another county for other attorneys that are no longer practicing, and trying to decide, okay, what were the parties' intentions back then, and how do we clean this up for everybody going forward?
Little planning goes a long way.
Very long way.
All right, well, if you have any questions about that, we'd be happy to talk with you about them. I don't know much else. You got any sports news?
College basketball starts tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
Sparty, #1.
I think the Illini are going to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, they got a tough matchup tonight.
I'm not sure it is, but I think they'll win. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.